obviously you full well know that for most people, my students included, but most people in the general population, that if you say Vikings, warrior is, kind of comes up first and foremost in people's minds. But I want to kind of dive into what does warrior actually mean? Because I remember 5 years ago or so when, the whole Burqa warrior thing blew up. And then Charlotte, your colleague, was on a podcast called Saga Thing. And I remember distinctly when I sort of, my ears perking up, because she said on there that even during the Viking Age itself, we don't have an entirely good sense of what they considered to be a warrior. So I thought that was really interesting. And so I'm just curious, if you had a time machine and you could go back and get plunked down into one of those, encampments that you write about in England in, say, the year 875, and you look around you and how would you identify a warrior? What would these people look like and what would they be acting like?
Oof. Well, I mean, and actually I should mention this is entirely the subject of this Nordforsk project, is actually to address these kind of central questions. I mean, the term warrior, it's so heavily laden. Everyone has their own idea of what a warrior is, right? I'm not sure often it goes beyond someone who hits other people with iron objects, But I think the way, and this is the approach we want to take in this new project, is these are a social group. They're probably a very, very niche social group, socio-economic group within society. Their roles, and I'm saying this before we've actually even started doing any of the research. I mean, their roles I think are intrinsically tied to many different social processes. I mean, obviously they are actors of violence, or agents of violence when they need to be, or perhaps when they want to be. But at the same time, they're kind of embodying, the kind of the top, I think, well, perhaps somewhere near the top of this, what we would call the social hierarchy, a group of, primarily high status aristocratic peoples. Obviously you have war leaders with retinues and so on. But they're embodying a way of life. If you say, if we were to just plonk ourselves down in a Viking encampment somewhere in 9th century Europe, how you would recognize these people? Well, I mean, as I said, I guess they would be the kind of the primary combatants within those forces. Sure. They're also likely the people leading various groups, taking roles in diplomacy and interaction with the populations around them. It's hard to kind of, you don't want to ascribe too much prominence to them at the same time, though, I think. And I think that's, again, something we want to get at, is actually define this social niche that they fill. I mean, you've really begun with one of the hardest questions you could have asked me, I think, in terms of what we wanted to talk about today.
Well, so just a quick curiosity, just on what you've said so far. Is it in the research that you're doing? Are you trying to get closer to how they may have self-identified? If you move forward a couple hundred years and you get into chivalry, for example, right? And prowess was the #1 trait a knight wanted to possess. It's my ability to subdue another person in battle, right? And they identified with prowess, and so is that self-identification. But during the Viking Age, since it seems more ambiguous as to whether there was a warrior culture that was self-identifying as such. So is it more of a trying to parse out, how did these people self-identify versus, because we all look back and we go, well, that's the warrior class, right? Very easy. But is that kind of what you guys are trying to dig into a little bit?
I think that's really where we're going. Yeah, I mean, of course, self-identification is a major aspect of this. In my past research, I've discussed how these various what we call warrior groups might have formed and their life course, and of course they're defined by specific types of material culture related to martial activity, for sure. And I think actually, rather than I think talking about a kind of martial society, that is what we're discussing here in the Viking Age. I'm not sure that there is such a defined, in a sense, warrior class as we may perhaps see with chivalry in the later Middle Ages. But these are clearly people, I think, who are set. They are distinct from the wider population in their own way. And actually, what I think we want to try and do is identify what the nature of those relationships is between these people and the wider population. As political agents, social agents, agents of violence, possibly with their own kind of, for want of a better word, religious presence. They're intrinsically tied to the elite, and therefore with kind of ritual practice, which is entwined with the political sphere. I mean, really, what you can say is that they're far more complex, I think, these groups, than we've really given them credit for today in the literature. And there's a lot of unpacking to do there.